Maia stepped into the negotiation chamber. The air hit her throat, cold and dry, recycled too many times, scrubbed of every scent. Breathing felt like nothing. The void reactor hummed through the deck plates, a low vibration. She felt it in her teeth. She stood at the center of the chamber with her hands open at her sides, a posture of peace. Her shoulders memorized the shape. She had practiced it in her quarters for hours. The Quartzar envoy appeared on the display, a pillar of rough obsidian. Red crystal veins crawled across its surface like lightning frozen mid-strike. It made no sound, made no movement. It simply waited. Mountains know how to wait. Maia spoke. "We represent a species newly arrived among the stars. We have resources you might find valuable. Metals, rare earths, access to trade routes we are still mapping. We offer a new chapter, a shared future built on mutual benefit." She heard her own voice and hated it. Too bright, too hopeful, but she pushed through. The Quartzar envoy used a translation module. The module turned her words into a single grinding syllable. "Leave." Thalia muttered from the tactical station, low enough that Maia knew she was meant to hear it anyway. Should have brought a battle group. Leander shot Thalia a look from his position by the wall. His arms were crossed, his fingers drumming against his own elbow. He said nothing. He never did. But the look carried weight. Vex interrupted with a crystalline chime. The Gemery ambassador flickered in their holographic projection, blue light scattering into violet patterns across the bulkhead. They looked like carved sapphire in the shape of a tall, thin figure. Every movement produced a soft resonance. "The Quartzar consider organic life a form of pollution," Vex said. Their voice was layered, harmonics stacked on harmonics. "I find the sentiment personally distasteful, but politically it is a neutral fact. They do not negotiate with contamination, they remove it." Maia turned back to the display. The envoy had not moved, had not shifted its stance by a single centimeter. She tried again. "We were fractured once, enemies for centuries. We fought wars that nearly destroyed us, and then we stopped. We learned to share a world with the people we had called monsters. That is who we are, that is what we offer you." She told the story, the long arc of it, the cost, the impossible choice. Generations before her had made it. They chose to extend a hand instead of a fist. The envoy did not move. For a long moment, nothing happened. The silence stretched until Maia could hear her own pulse in her ears. The vibration of the reactor crawled up through her shoes. Then the envoy transmitted a single image. A simulation. The human ship rendered in stark lines caught between two enormous plates of stone. The plates closed, the ship crumpled, the void reactor detonated. A white flash swallowed everything. The image held for 3 seconds. Then the channel closed. The display went dark. Maia stared at the blank screen. Her hands were still open at her sides. She lowered them slowly. "Sensors are picking up a fleet," Thalia said. Her voice had changed. The edge was gone, replaced by something flatter. "Quartzar ships moving into the system. They are not powering weapons." "Then what are they doing?" Leander asked. Thalia leaned closer to her console. Her jaw tightened. "They are landing on the moon. They are tearing it apart, the outer crust. They are building something." Vex's hologram flickered. The blue light dimmed and brightened in a slow pulse. Maia had learned to read that as discomfort. "A fortress. They are not here to fight you. They are here to occupy. They consider your presence irrelevant. You are an insect on a stone. The stone is theirs to claim." Maia stood in the center of the empty chamber. The air bit at her lips. The cold dryness made them crack when she spoke. They did not listen. Leander uncrossed his arms. His voice was careful, deliberately flat. "They heard you, they just could not process it. Their minds do not work that way. Stories are not data to them, stories are noise." Maia looked at the dark display. She thought about the image, the ship crumpling, the white flash. "They think in strata," she said slowly. "In geological time, in absolute hierarchy. I told them a story about change, about redemption, about enemies becoming friends." She stopped. "They do not have a concept for that. Their world does not shift, not fast enough to matter. My words hit them like wind on rock." Thalia stood up from the tactical station. Her hand hovered over the console, not quite touching it. "So what do we do now?" Maia had no answer. The reactor hummed through the floor. The cold air filled her lungs. Outside, 14 light towers away, an alien fleet was tearing apart a moon to build a fortress. They had not fired a shot. They had not needed to. She stood alone in the silent chamber, and she did not know what to do next. Thalia paced a tight circuit behind the command chair. The bridge smelled of burnt insulation and ozone. Her boots hit the deck plates in a rhythm. Every third step she glanced at the main display. The moon hung there, half-eaten. Quartzar constructs rose from the rubble like crystalline spines. They had been at it for 12 hours. Already the surface was unrecognizable. The fortress grew in layers. Each new segment slid into place with geological slowness. Thalia stopped pacing. Her scarred jaw tightened. No hails, no demands. They just kept building. Maia sat at the comm station, hands folded in her lap. She had not moved in 30 minutes. Her eyes stayed fixed on the display. She watched the aliens reshape a world. Humanity was a termite nest they had decided to ignore. Leander's voice cut through the hum of failing systems. Reactor temperature climbing again. Thalia turned. I did not order a burn. You did not have to? Leander did not look up from his panel. The cooling system is still stressed from the last evasive maneuver. It is not recovering. How long? 3 hours before we have to power down non-essential systems, maybe less. Thalia opened her mouth to respond, but Leander held up a hand. His eyes were still on the readouts. New contact, long range, small. The display flickered, then updated. A single dot emerged from behind the moon. It moved fast. Thalia crossed to the tactical station. ID it. Scout class, Quartzar design, no transponder broadcast. The dot grew larger. It did not slow down. Maia stood. Are they hailing? Silence answered her. The scout entered weapons range and kept coming. No communication, no threat display, just approach. Thalia gripped the edge of her console. Shields to full, point defense online. The scout fired. A single kinetic rod punched through the outer hull at half the speed of sound. The impact sent a shudder through the entire ship. Alarms screamed. Atmosphere vented for a split second. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut. Thalia was already moving. Evasive, port thrusters full burn. The Hesperus lurched, gravity strained, the deck tilted. Maia grabbed her chair to stay upright. Thalia brought the point defense cannons online. They tracked the scout across the void. A stream of tungsten rounds spat at its hull. The rounds hit and ricocheted, no visible damage. Shields, Thalia demanded. They are not using shields, Leander said. The hull is absorbing impact. It is solid crystal. We are scratching it. The scout fired again. This time the rod clipped the broadcast suppressor dish. The impact tore the array from its mount. The dish tumbled away. It spun into the black. The jamming field collapsed. Maia's voice was quiet. What do they want? No one answered. The scout adjusted course. It was lining up for a third shot. Thalia made the call. Pulse the EMP, full power. Leander's head snapped up. That will shut us down too. No shields, no life support, no navigation. 40 seconds of absolute dark in a combat zone. I know what it does. Thalia, the cooling system is already compromised. If the reactor loses circulation for 40 seconds. Prep the EMP. Leander held her gaze for 2 heartbeats. Then he turned to his console and began the sequence. The display showed the scout approaching. It was close now. Detail became visible. A jagged hull of black crystal. Veins of red light pulsed along its spine. It looked alive. Thalia waited. She watched the scout's approach vector, watched it line up the next shot, watched the veins in its hull brighten. Fire. The EMP fired. The sound was not a bang. It was a long electrical scream. The pitch rose, then it faded into nothing. The scout went dark. The Hesperus went dark. Lights flickered and died. Gravity cut. The alarms silenced. The bridge dropped into absolute black. Only the thin glow of emergency strips remained along the floor. 40 seconds. Thalia stood still in the dark. She could hear her own breathing, and Maia's. The hum of the reactor faded as the cooling system lost power. 30 seconds. The silence stretched. The emergency strips cast long shadows. The deck grew cold. 20 seconds. Thalia counted the seconds, then the breaths. She imagined the scout drifting out there, dead in the void. 10 seconds. The lights flickered. Then the gravity returned. The displays rebooted. The alarms came back online. They screamed in staggered sequence. Thalia moved before the systems fully stabilized. She checked tactical. The scout was drifting. No power readings, no movement, no signs of life. Boarding team, get me data from that hull, anything. Maia was watching her. Thalia felt the weight of that gaze but did not meet it. The boarding team launched. 13 minutes later, the report came back. 3 Quartzar crew, all inert. Their silicon-based nervous systems had not survived the pulse. The EMP had scrambled their crystalline structures. Those structures served as their brains. They were dead before they hit the dark. Thalia stared at the report. The scout hung on her display. A tomb now, drifting away from the moon. A flush of victory rose in her chest. They had stopped it. They had hit back. Then the flush curdled. She looked at the scout again. It had not been trying to destroy them. It had not targeted the reactor, not the bridge, not the life support. It had fired warning shots. It had been testing them. And she had killed its crew. Thalia turned to face Maia. The diplomat was still standing by the comm station, her hand gripping the back of the chair. Thalia's voice came out flat. They will answer now. Maia's face was unreadable. The display flickered. The fortress on the moon began to pulse. A deep red light spread through its crystalline structure. It rose from the core outward. The glow intensified. It cast the entire bridge in crimson. Alarms shrieked. Leander's voice broke through. Massive energy buildup, tectonic scale, something is waking up under the moon's crust. The deck shuddered. The ship's comm system crackled to life. A single word came through, low and resonant, felt through the deck plating rather than heard. Retribution. Thalia looked at the display. The red light kept growing. The moon was cracking. Something immense pushed up from beneath. The ground shook again. Thalia realized the first act of war had not been the scout. It had been her. Leander yanked his arm free from the cooling conduit. Coolant left a green smear on his sleeve. The reactor hummed wrong, a deep, irregular thrum like a skipped heartbeat. He had worked blind against a valve. He could not see it. The numbers in his head did not match the numbers on the panel. "Come on," he muttered. "Come on, come on." The valve turned a quarter rotation and stopped. He pulled his arm free and wiped coolant from his forearm. The stuff left a green smear on his sleeve. He looked at the readouts again. Something cold settled in his chest. The void reactor was oscillating. Not drifting, not cycling, oscillating. A rising and falling power curve with no stable midpoint. The EMP pulse had damaged the containment regulators. He could see it in the waveform. A sine wave climbed higher with every pass. Each peak was hotter than the last. Each trough was shallower. He had minutes, not hours. The engineering bay door hissed open. Maia stepped through. Emergency lights caught the pallor of her skin. She looked like she had not slept since the EMP hit. She probably had not. "Tell me you have good news," she said. "I have bad news and worse news." "Give me bad." Leander pointed at the reactor display. "The regulators are cracked. The oscillation is accelerating. In about 12 minutes, the next peak will exceed the containment threshold. After that, we have a meltdown." Maia stared at the waveform. She did not ask if he was sure. She knew him well enough. He would not say 12 minutes unless he had checked the math 4 times. "What is the worst news?" "I cannot fix it." He said it flat, no emotion, just a fact. "The regulators are inside the containment shell. To reach them, I would have to power down the reactor entirely. That takes 18 minutes. We do not have 18 minutes. Maia closed her eyes, then she opened them and stepped closer. "The anchor, the fold space anchor." Leander blinked. "What about it?" "We jump out system, then we collapse it." He stared at her. "You want to use the anchor as a weapon." "I want to use the anchor as a way to not die. The Quartzar fleet is still on that moon. If we jump, they lose our position. If we collapse the anchor while they try to track us, the surge would scatter them, uncontrolled space." "Yes." Leander turned back to the reactor display. The waveform climbed. He watched it peak, hold for a fraction of a second, then drop. The next peak would be higher. "The anchor is not calibrated for a combat jump," he said. "It needs a stable power source. The reactor is anything but stable. If I get the timing wrong, if I connect it at the wrong point in the oscillation, the anchor will tear the ship apart before we finish the fold." Maia did not flinch. "How much time do you need to set it up?" 5 minutes minimum." "You have 8. The attack ship is 1 minute from weapons range." Leander turned. "What attack ship?" The comm unit on his belt crackled. Thalia's voice came through, tight and clipped. "Leander, we have a Quartzar attack ship bearing 034, closing at high speed. 1 minute to weapons range. I need options." Leander looked at the reactor. He looked at Maia. He looked at the anchor control console on the far wall, covered in dust. Nobody had used it since the Hesperus left dry dock. He was not in control. The ship was not in control. The reactor was doing what it wanted. It wanted to destroy itself. So use the problem. The thought came from nowhere. He grabbed it. Maia, get to the bridge. Tell Thalia to hold fire. Do not engage. Leanders. Do not engage. I need every scrap of power the reactor has. If she fires weapons, the power draw will shift the oscillation. I will lose my window. Maia held his gaze for 1 second. Then she turned and ran. Leander crossed to the anchor console. He pulled the cover off and looked at the wiring. Standard, clean, useless. He needed to hotwire the anchor directly to the reactor's oscillation pattern. Use the instability as a trigger instead of fighting it. The math was insane. The margin for error was measured in milliseconds. He started pulling wires. The deck vibrated beneath him. The reactor hum climbed higher, lower, higher, lower. He matched his work to the rhythm. A connection on the peak, a bypass on the trough. His hands moved without his permission. Something older than thought guided them. 30 seconds passed. The comm unit crackled again. Leander, what is your status? Thalia's voice strained. 30 seconds. We do not have 30 seconds. The attack ship is at 40 seconds from weapons range. Then give me 40 seconds. He kept working. His fingers found a junction box he had not seen before. He ripped it open. 3 wires, red, blue, black. He chose red. He chose black. He left blue dangling. The reactor peaked. He connected the anchor. The trough hit. He locked the connection. The anchor console lit up. A soft orange glow pulsed at the core of the device. Anchor's locked, he said into the comm. Power feed is unstable. I need a 3-second window to initiate the fold. You will get 1 second, Thalia said. The attack ship is at 20 seconds. Leander looked at the waveform. The next peak was coming. He watched it climb. Higher, higher, higher. It peaked. He slammed the initiate command. The world stopped. The fold space anchor activated. The universe folded around the Hesperus. The ship lurched sideways without moving. The hull screamed. A sound like tearing metal, like the ship was being pulled apart molecule by molecule. The corridor opened in front of him, violet black, empty. Nothing moved inside it. Leander's ears popped. Something warm ran down his upper lip. Blood. He did not wipe it away. 3 seconds. He counted them. 1. The hull groaned. The deck plates buckled. The violet-black corridor stretched. 2. The reactor screamed. The oscillation spiked. The anchor held. 3. The fold collapsed. The Hesperus dropped into real space. The stars snapped back into position, wrong and unfamiliar. The anchor console went dark. The orange glow died. The device had done its job. Leander stood in the engineering bay. His hands were shaking. His ears were ringing. Blood dripped from his chin onto the console. He looked at the readouts. The reactor was stable. The oscillation was gone. The containment regulators were still cracked, but the reactor was running flat. No peaks, no troughs, just a steady hum. He had not fixed it. He had used the problem as a solution. He had taken a failing reactor and turned it into a weapon. It had worked. He felt nothing, no pride, no relief, no satisfaction. Just the cold knowledge that he was no longer in control. The ship was alive in ways he could not predict. The math had worked this time. It would not always. He wiped his nose on his sleeve and stared at the blood. The comm unit crackled. Thalia's voice, different now, softer. We are 7 light hours from the system, no pursuit. The anchor collapse generated a fold surge. It should have scattered the Quartzar fleet across 2 sectors. Good, Leander said. He did not sound like himself. Stabilize the reactor, Thalia said. We need power for long-range comms. Leander opened his mouth to answer. A new signal cut through. A chime, an incoming transmission. Not Quartzar. The voice that came through was fractured, urgent. Vex, the Gemery ambassador. Human vessel. The Gemery Council has seen the broadcast. They are debating intervention. A pause, static. But you will not survive long enough for a vote. The comm line went silent for 3 heartbeats. Then a data burst arrived. Leander opened it. An image resolved on the display. The Quartzar fleet, not scattered, not destroyed. The fold surge had thrown them off, but they had already plotted the Hesperus's escape vector. They were coming. Maia picked up the data pad. It glowed in the dark of her quarters. No ventilation, no power conduits, no life support cycling. She had shut it all down. The ship needed every watt for the reactor's cooling pumps. She played Vex's message again. The Gemery ambassador's blue crystalline face fractured light across her walls in shifting patterns. Their voice was a series of resonant chimes. The pad speaker translated them into flat, deliberate words. The Gemery Council will not intervene. The Quartzar have made no demand. They have issued no declaration of war. They are simply building. There is no legal basis for our involvement unless the conflict escalates beyond military means. The message ended. Maia let the silence return. Beyond military means. She had tried diplomacy. She had tried a story of redemption. The Quartzar had crushed her ship in a simulation. They had called her irrelevant. She pressed her palms against her eyes until she saw colors. 4 hours since Leander had hot-wired the fold space anchor to the reactor's oscillation pattern. 4 hours since they had jumped out system and collapsed the tether behind them. The Quartzar fleet was still pursuing. Slower now, but still coming. The Hesperus was wounded, running silent, running out of options. Maia sat up, her hands were shaking, she ignored them. The broadcast suppressor. The dish array was designed to jam every frequency across a 100,000-kilometer radius. A blanket of noise. A jammer was just a carrier wave with nothing on it. What if she put something on that wave? Not noise. Signal. She pulled up the technical specs. The suppressor used a phased carrier frequency, a low bandwidth channel. It cut through interference by sheer power. It was meant to block. But the same channel could carry data if you modulated it correctly. The Quartzar would receive whatever she transmitted. They could not filter it. They would have to hear it. She called the bridge. Thalia answered on the first chime. Her voice was clipped. The scar on her jaw caught the red glow of her console. Tell me you have a plan. I have a plan. Is it less insane than the last one? No. A pause, Thalia's eyes narrowed. Maia heard Leander's voice in the background, groggy, pulled from sleep. What plan? Maia took a breath. The Quartzar do not understand narrative as persuasion. They understand narrative as data, as a sequence of causes and effects. I will give them a sequence. Their hierarchical logic cannot resolve it. Thalia stared at her. Say that again in plain speech. I will tell them a story, a human story, but I will strip it of emotion, just cause and effect. One thing leading to another. A colony surrendered to invaders, then through cooperation it outlasted them. The invaders became partners. The colony survived because it did not fight. Leander's face appeared over Thalia's shoulder. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands still streaked with grease. You think it will work? I think it will break something in their thinking, Maia said. They see organic life as pollution, as a temporary stain. Nothing can redeem it. But if I can show them a sequence where defeat leads to strength, where surrender becomes survival, that pattern does not fit their hierarchy. It is a paradox. They cannot resolve it without questioning their own doctrine. Thalia shook her head. It is insane. It is the only tool we have left, Leander said quietly. Thalia looked at him, then at Maia. She did not say yes, she said, how long? I need an hour to write it. Then I need the suppressor's carrier channel opened on a wide beam. The suppressor will blind us. No sensors, no comms, no navigation while it is active. I know. Thalia's jaw tightened. 1 hour. Maia wrote the broadcast on the data pad. Her fingers moved without hesitation. She chose a historical event from 3 centuries ago, a human colony on the edge of contested space, an invasion by a technologically superior force. The colony had no weapons that could match the invaders. They surrendered, expecting annihilation. But the invaders had a problem. The colony's infrastructure was incompatible with their own. They could not use it without the colonists' cooperation. The colonists, in exchanging surrender for survival, discovered their captors had needs: repairs, maintenance, local knowledge. Over 2 generations, the invaders became dependent. The colony became indispensable. The relationship shifted from conquest to symbiosis. Maia stripped every word of emotion. She wrote it as a sequence. A timeline, a logical progression when the invaders arrived, what they wanted, what the colonists gave, what the invaders needed, how the pattern changed. Cause, effect, cause, effect. No redemption, no triumph, just data. She transmitted it through the suppressor's carrier channel on a wide beam. The ship went dark and silent. No sensors, no comms, no navigation, only the broadcast. It poured into the void at the speed of light, aimed directly at the pursuing Quartzar fleet. Maia sat in the comm station on the bridge. Thalia stood at tactical, her hand hovering over the emergency restart for life support. Leander leaned against a bulkhead, eyes closed, breathing slow. 4 minutes. Then Thalia's voice low and tight. They have stopped, all of them, no movement. Maia held her breath. Another minute, then 2, then 4. Leander opened his eyes. That is too long, something is happening. Thalia's console flickered. A single ship in the Quartzar formation broke formation. It rotated. It fired on the command vessel directly behind it. A kinetic rod punched through the flagship's reactor housing. The explosion was silent, visible only as a spreading cloud of debris. It caught the light of the system's star. Silence on the bridge. Thalia turned to Maia. It worked. Maia did not answer. She watched the debris cloud expand on the display. Her hands had stopped shaking. That was worse. She felt cold and clear and empty. She had just learned her species' best tool was not strength, not technology. It was the ability to make others see a new pattern. A pattern broke them open from the inside. She was not a diplomat. She was a virus. She looked at the Fold Space Anchor's dead core on the engineering display. Its orange glow had faded to gray. The device was spent. Its internal tether collapsed. Its crystal matrix cracked from the overload. The ship's main display flickered. A new signal, not Quartzar, not Gemery. Unknown. Vast. Moving. Thalia's voice cut through the silence. Maia, the Gemery Council just sent a message. It says your broadcast has been studied. They understand now. They say the Veil Shard have registered a psionic disturbance. Something is listening, not to them, to you. Maia stared at the new signature on the display. It was immense. Far larger than any ship she had ever seen. It was moving toward them. She did not know what it was, but it had heard her story, and it wanted more. The fourth replay began. Vex floated in the suspension field. Their crystalline lattice hummed with the light pressure of data. The human broadcast scrolled through their core processors again, clean logical sequence. Cause, effect, consequence. A colony surrendered. A colony integrated. A colony found symbiosis through submission. No emotional payload, no threat, no plea. Yet the Quartzar fleet had stalled. 6 warships, a siege fortress in construction, and a warlord who had never lost a contested system. All of them frozen in place. Their tactical network fragmented into contradictory subroutines. The council tone washed through the observation sphere. Blue light pulsing in harmonic thirds. They wanted an explanation. Vex formed the response crystal to crystal. The vibration carried meaning without sound. The humans did something I cannot model. The broadcast contains no weaponized rhetoric, no mimetic hazard, no subaudible command sequence. It is a narrative. It is incomplete. The council pulsed red, caution. A pressure bloomed at the edge of Vex's awareness. Not sound, not light. The Veil Shard observer had been silent for the entire engagement. A psionic presence so diffuse it registered only as a low-grade headache behind Vex's sensor nodes. Now it sharpened. The sensation arrived without language. Vex processed it as meaning anyway. They sang a dead song. The Quartzar heard it as a wound. Vex rotated in the suspension field. Crystalline facets tracked toward the Veil Shard's approximate location. The observer had no physical form Vex could resolve, only a pressure, a weight in the space where a body should be. Explain, Vex sent. The Veil Shard did not answer in words. It pushed understanding instead. Vex had to brace against the flood. A song without a final note, a circle unclosed. The Quartzar minds resolve every pattern to completion. It is their survival mechanism. It is their vulnerability. The human story offered a beginning and a middle and then nothing. The Quartzar processors tried to complete the pattern. They found no solution. They kept trying. Their fleet network collapsed into recursive paralysis. Vex held very still in the suspension field. The humans had weaponized a blank space. The Gemery had existed for 40,000 cycles. They had seen wars fought with dimensional collapse and stellar ignition. They had watched species burn themselves to silence. They had never considered that a missing piece of a story could break a fleet. The council pulsed blue again, faster this time. They wanted strategy. Vex began forming a response. Then a new signal cut through the observation sphere. Direct channel, Quartzar encryption, warlord frequency. Koresh. The vibration in the data stream was wrong. The Quartzar warlord's communication signature usually carried a crushing confidence. A tectonic certainty. It made other species, relays hum with sympathetic stress. This signal wavered. It stuttered at the edges. What are they? The question ground through the channel like stone against stone. Vex had never heard uncertainty from a Quartzar. The species did not have a word for doubt. They had conviction or they had silence. Vex sent a careful reply, I do not know. The channel did not close. Korash's presence hung there, a weight pressing against the Gemery observation sphere. The warlord was waiting, expecting. Vex opened a second channel, the Hesperus. The human ship answered on the third pulse. Maia's face appeared in the light projection. Haggard, dark circles under her eyes, her fingers tapped a rhythm against her console. She looked like someone who had just survived something she did not understand. Ambassador, she said, her voice was raw. What happened out here? Vex considered the question. The Gemery did not lie. They also did not reveal strategic information without council authorization. But the council was watching. The blue light in the observation sphere had shifted toward something Vex had never seen before. Not agreement, not caution. Curiosity. Vex formed the words carefully. Each syllable resonated through the carrier wave. The Quartzar do not understand surrender, but they understand stalemate. You have created one. The fleet is frozen. Korash cannot advance and will not retreat. Maia's fingers stopped tapping. She stared at the projection. Something moved behind her eyes. Comprehension but not relief. She was already calculating the next move. The Veil Shard wants to meet you. Maia's expression shifted. Confusion, caution, a thin thread of hope she tried very hard to suppress. The Veil Shard, why? Vex looked at the data stream again. The broadcast sat there, inert and simple, a story with no ending, a weapon that did not look like a weapon. The Gemery had archives spanning 10,000 cycles. They had records of every major conflict in the sector. None of them contained a precedent for this. Because you did something no one else has tried, Vex said. You left the story unfinished. Maia did not answer. She looked away from the projection, toward something Vex could not see. The Hesperus bridge, probably, her crew, the people she had just saved by telling them a story that did not end. The Veil Shard observer pressed closer. The headache behind Vex's sensor nodes intensified. Then it resolved into a single clear impression. Come to the dead moon, bring your unfinished story. Vex relayed the message. Maia listened. Her jaw tightened, she nodded once. She did not ask for details, she did not bargain. Understood, she said, the channel closed. Vex floated in the suspension field. They watched the Hesperus change course on the tactical display. The ship was battered, bleeding atmosphere from 3 hull breaches. Running on a reactor Leander had flagged as critically unstable. It should not have been moving at all. It was moving toward the dead moon. The council pulsed blue one final time, then they withdrew from the observation sphere. The light faded to neutral white. Vex was alone. The Veil Shard's pressure pressed in. The tactical display glowed. A strange, unfamiliar sensation crystallized in their core processors. Admiration. Not for human strength, not for their weapons or their tactics, for their willingness to leave a gap in the story, for their trust that the silence would carry more weight than the words. The Gemery were ancient. They had never considered that a blank space could be a weapon. Vex wanted to learn. The Hesperus drifted toward the moon. Thalia's voice cut across the open channel. Low, flat, the voice of someone who had already accepted the worst. This is how we die, isn't it? A pause, the channel hummed with empty carrier wave. Maia did not answer. The dust crunched under Maia's boots. Each step sent a fine crystalline powder into the thin air. It caught in her throat like ground glass. 100 meters from the Hesperus, she stopped. The Veil Shard was not visible, not in any way her eyes could hold. It existed as a shimmer at the edge of the dust cloud. A heat haze distortion did not belong to temperature. Behind her, Vex hovered in their suspension field. Blue crystal caught the pale light of the dying star. They had not spoken since the landing. Then the images came. Not through her ears, not through her eyes. They arrived as a pressure behind her skull. A warmth spread from the base of her spine to the crown of her head. A battle, her battle, the Hesperus running dark. The EMP cascade firing, the ship going cold and silent for 40 seconds. It felt like drowning. She saw her own face from outside herself. She saw the moment she recorded the broadcast. The stripped-down words, the flat recitation of a colony that surrendered and survived. She watched herself press transmit. She watched the Quartzar fleet go still in orbit. The images did not stop. They played forward past the point she had stopped speaking. They reached for an ending she had not provided. The warmth behind her eyes became a dull ache. The veil shard was pushing through the broadcast, trying to find the final scene. It did not exist. The pressure released, Maia gasped. The cold air burned her throat. The question arrived without words, not a sound, a shape in her mind. A pattern resolved into meaning with no language attached. Why did you not finish the story? Maia's fingers tightened around the portable broadcast unit, still warm from testing. She had brought it as a prop, a comfort object, something to hold. She had not expected to need it. Because we do not know the ending yet. She thought the words deliberately. She pushed them outward the way the veil shard had pushed its images inward. She did not know if the method would work. That's the point. The shimmer in the dust grew still. A long pause. The silence on the moon's surface was absolute. No wind, no animals, no ambient hum, just the rasp of her own breathing. The distant thrum of the Hesperus's reactor through the ground. Then the veil shard showed her something else. A history not told in words, experienced as a sliding of time across her senses. She saw a species existing as thought made manifest, drifting through layers of psionic reality. They did not build, they did not fight. They observed and they drifted and they observed some more. Conflicts passed beneath them like weather. Wars ended, civilizations rose and fell. The veil shard watched it all with the same detached attention a human gave to clouds. They did not intervene because they did not see the conflicts as real. They were patterns, passing patterns. Nothing demanded resolution. The images faded. Maia stood in the dust, and she understood. The veil shard were not indifferent out of malice. They were not passive out of cowardice. They were incomplete in a way she had not anticipated. They had no concept of narrative closure, no framework for a story that ended with meaning. They saw existence as an infinite recursion, events happening but nothing ever finishing. They had never learned what an ending could do. The thought settled into her chest like a stone. She pressed the broadcast unit against her hip and spoke aloud. The thin air carried her voice poorly, but she felt the veil shard receive her meaning before the sound reached them. There is a story from my species, one soldier. He was part of a unit he had never met on a world he had never seen. His orders were to hold a position for 6 hours so a larger force could escape. He held for 6 hours, then he held for 6 more. When the ammunition ran out, he used rocks. When the rocks ran out, he used his hands. He died and the unit escaped. She delivered it flat, no emotion, no weight, just facts the way she had delivered the colony broadcast. The veil shard was silent. Then the warmth behind her eyes returned. This time it was different, not a pressure seeking resolution, a resonance. The veil shard turned the story over in its mind, the way a tongue explores a broken tooth. Sacrifice, the word arrived as a shape, a pattern she recognized but could not have predicted. We did not know this pattern existed. Maia did not answer, her throat had closed. The shimmer in the dust expanded. It spread outward in a wave. Crystalline powder spiraled into new patterns. The warmth behind her eyes became heat on her skin. The veil shard was no longer just observing. It was choosing. A signal left the moon's surface. Maia felt it as a harmonic. A frequency rang in her teeth and her bones and the fillings in her molars. It spread outward at light speed. A wave of intent crossed the distance to the Quartzar fleet in seconds. Korash's ships went dead. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply stopped. Every system, every weapon, every life support unit halted simultaneously. They hung in orbit like monuments. Vex chimed. The sound was soft, almost reverent. They spoke for the first time since landing. The veil shard has broadcast across the system. All Quartzar activity has ceased. They are not dead. They are suspended. The council will need to decide what comes next. Maia turned to face them. Her legs were unsteady. The cold had seeped through her boots and into her bones. The veil shard spoke again. The thought arrived with a weight that pressed her shoulders down. The entity had learned what gravity meant. We will carry your story to the rest of the galaxy. The warmth behind her eyes pulsed. But stories change the teller. You will not be the same species when we are done. Maia opened her mouth, closed it. There was nothing to say. Nothing would matter more than what had already happened. She walked back to the Hesperus. The dust crunched under her boots. Each step was an effort now. The thin air, the cold, the weight of what she had done pressed her toward the ground. The ramp lowered as she approached. Leander stood at the top. His hands were shoved into his pockets. His face was unreadable. "You okay?" "No." He nodded, said nothing else. The ramp closed behind her. The Hesperus lifted from the moon's surface. The dust below swirled into a cloud. It blotted out the Veilshard's position. Thalia's voice came over the intercom. Incoming contacts, multiple, reading signatures from 3 different species, Gemery, Veilshard, and something the database does not recognize. Maia reached the bridge. The display showed a tactical plot that made no sense. A dozen ships, then 40, then 100, resolving out of fold space at the system's edge. They were not attacking, they were holding position. Waiting. Thalia looked at her. The scar across her jaw was white against her dark skin. They are watching us. Maia sat down in the comm station. Her hands were still shaking. No. She looked at the display, at the 100 ships, at the fleet that had not existed an hour ago. They are listening. Thalia stepped onto the Gemery station deck. The air was too warm. Her skin prickled with sweat she did not trust. The bridge of the Hesperus still smelled like her ship. Burnt insulation, recycled oxygen, the faint chemical tang of repaired conduits. But the station's atmosphere bled through the docking seals. It carried something floral, something wrong. She stood at the main display with her arms crossed. The display showed a swarm of lights, blue for Gemery, violet for Veilshard, red for the shattered remnants of something that used to be a Quartzar fleet, and gray, the dull gray markers of ships with no affiliation yet, ships waiting. 42 vessels from 9 species, all of them staring at a single human ship. Thalia's jaw tightened, the scar across her jaw pulled white. They want a voice, not a treaty, just a voice. Maia sat at the comm station, motionless. She looked older. The shadows under her eyes had settled into something permanent. Her fingers rested on the console but did not tap. The council transmitted an informal invitation, Vex said. The Gemery's projection flickered at the edge of the display. Smooth blue crystal. Light refracted into patterns that shifted with each syllable. They want your stories. They want you to tell them to the other species. They believe narrative has tactical value now. Thalia turned. Tactical value. Yes. We are not a weapon. Vex paused. The light pattern slowed. You are something the galaxy has never seen. The Council calls it a resource. I call it a responsibility. The Quartzar call it a threat they do not understand. That is the only reason they stopped. Thalia's hands dropped to her sides. She walked toward Maia 3 steps, 4. She stopped in front of the comm station. She looked down at the diplomat who had started all of this. I refuse. Maia looked up. Her eyes were calm, wrongly calm. I refuse, Thalia repeated. Humanity does not know what it is doing. You do not know what you are doing. You played with fire on that moon, Maia. You sent a story with no ending into a species that could have crushed us into dust. It worked because of luck, because of a guess. You have no idea why it worked. Maia said nothing. We are not ready for this, Thalia said. We are not ready to be a voice for anyone. We barely survived our own history. You want to give the galaxy our stories. You want to weaponize everything we are. We will break. We will break them. We will not be able to take it back. The silence stretched. Leander laughed, short, bitter, a sound that did not belong in the warm, floral air of the station deck. He'll never understand. That's our only advantage. Thalia turned. Leander sat slumped in a seat by the engineering console. One hand rested against a repaired panel. His fingers were still stained with grease. His eyes were red. Korash, he said. The warlord, he asked for a meeting. He wants to understand the broadcast. He does not know what it means, so he will not attack until he does. That is Quartzar logic. Understand first, destroy second. He will never understand. There is nothing to understand. We made it up as we went. Thalia stared at him. Leander met her gaze. That's the advantage. We do not know what we are doing. They do. It terrifies them. Maia stood up. The motion was slow, deliberate. She placed both hands on the comm console and leaned forward. Her voice was low. You are right. We are not ready. Thalia blinked. We are not ready, Maia repeated. Neither are they. That is why it works. Thalia opened her mouth, closed it. Maia turned to the display. The 42 ships hung in the dark, their light markers pulsing in the quiet rhythm of waiting. The blue, the violet, the red, the gray. The galaxy has rules, Maia said. Every species here has existed for tens of thousands of years. They have protocols, hierarchies, patterns they trust. We walked in and broke every single one of them with a story we did not finish, because we do not know the ending yet. She paused. That is the only thing we have that they do not. Vex's projection flickered. The Quartzar have offered a ceasefire, Koresh is in a holding cell on the station. The Veil Shard guard him. He will not attack again until he understands the broadcast. Thalia's hands curled into fists. And when he does not understand, when he decides the broadcast is a trap instead of a story, then he will attack again, Vex said simply. But he will not attack today. He will not attack tomorrow. He will wait. While he waits, the coalition grows. The display changed. A new light appeared. Gold. The Veil Shard did not have a ship. They did not need one. But their presence had a marker anyway. A diffuse glow spread across the screen. It bled into the edges of the other lights. A message appeared, not words, not sound. It arrived in the mind like a pressure change, the weight of a coming storm. A new story has begun. Its author is human. Its readers are everyone else. The ending is unwritten. Thalia's breath caught. She looked at Maia. The diplomat stood with her back straight. Her hands rested on the console. Her shoulders were set. Her eyes were fixed on the display. Thalia wanted control. She wanted safety. She wanted a ship she could trust, a weapon she understood, an enemy she could shoot. She got none of those things. She got something else. She looked at Maia. She saw not a naive diplomat. She saw a person who had accepted a burden she did not ask for, a weight she could not set down. A person who had walked onto a moon and told a story to an entity. It could have erased her consciousness with a thought. Thalia did not say anything. She nodded. The movement was small, almost invisible. But Maia saw it. Something shifted in her eyes. Gratitude, maybe, or recognition. Maia turned to the display. All 42 ships waited. The blue, the violet, the red, the gold, the gray. She looked at them. She looked at the space between the lights. The dark was still thick. The unknown still pressed against the hull. She said, "Then let us make it a good one." The silence after her words was not empty. It was full. It pressed against the bridge like a held breath. The air cycled. The station hummed. The lights on the display pulsed. Thalia counted her heartbeats. 1, 2, 3. Maia sat down at the calm station. She placed her fingers on the console. And she began to tap. The sound was soft, rhythmic, a leftover from her childhood as a choir singer, a beat she carried in her bones. She tapped twice, 3 times, she paused. Then she started to compose. The unfinished broadcast continued.